It's day 18 in the Advent calendar, my friends. Yesterday we talked about the Dream Team, order of operations, and mortality. Today we'll talk about difficulty levels, legendary tactics, and
The time has come to reclaim our world. Welcome back, Commander.
Incoming transmission.
Day 18, strategy, difficulty levels. So, very little has been released about difficulty levels, and you can try and piece together what the differences will be between difficulties based on the preview streams, but there may be balance tweaks since then. We know that Beagle Rush's not stream, but videos and tactics have actually triggered a response from Firaxis they're going to nerf one of his tactics. The tactic was, I think they call it the Beagle ambush or something. The tactic is basically that you leave someone standing out in the open, like not behind cover, so that the enemy will walk into you and suffer all of your overwatch, instead of you having to break concealment by attacking them yourself. It does give you a couple. The benefit is extra attacks, because you and the enemy, of course, if they trigger on their turn, they do not get to attack you. So you kind of cut out you instigating their triggering on your turn, and they don't get to respond, and you get a whole other turn of fire. So, something about that. I wouldn't be surprised if they put in, and I personally would love to see kind of an itchy triggered tentacles, where some enemies will, instead of going for cover themselves, just take pot shots at you if it's a really good shot, because I think that really causes people to think a little more defensively when triggering pods. Anyway, so that I don't think is worth it. Think about it more like this. XCOM, think about what the designers want, and you'll probably have a good idea of what difficulty level you're going to want. So they're going to want the easiest difficulty level anyone is going to be able to get all the way through the game, while still seeing the occasional challenge. That's probably not for you if you're listening to my Advent calendar. If you have any decent try-hard muscles in your body at all, then that's probably going to be too easy. It's so anyone can play. Lowest bar. Lowest common denominator determines what makes easy easy. The hardest difficulty is going to be as hard as they can make it without, enraging fans. The thing is, you might be the kind of person like me who likes really hard games, and those kind of games enrage other people when they're not expecting to play them, and it turns out the game they are playing is like that. So it's probably not going to be as hard as the hardest games. It's not going to be as hard as Long War on the hardest difficulties. I would expect it to be about as hard as the Long War on normal difficulty, maybe a little bit nastier, since you won't have the added items and options that you did in Long War over vanilla. What I would suggest is one of the two in the middle, unless your body is only made of try-hard muscles, like mine, and you're going to go straight for legendary Ironman. Now, I thought Impossible on XCOM 2012 wasn't actually fun. I didn't really enjoy it. I don't like games where they just increase the stats. I did appreciate some of the other changes they made, but just raw stat boosts really piss me off when it comes to difficulty. I really like the game to be different. And I felt like the hardest difficulty actually pushed me into boring tactics. Or maybe the hardest difficulty kind of disallowed the more fun tactics. So personally, I would go with one of the two harder difficulties, legendary or veteran. Yeah, And I would slip into the third hardest difficulty if I wasn't totally sure that XCOM was the game for me. I have noticed that you get better loot from enemies on the harder difficulties, it seems. Like an advanced scope dropped for someone in like the first mission. Christopher Odd, I believe. And so that's like not a basic mod, but an advanced mod, so that's kind of cool. All right, so let's talk about what the difficulties what are you gonna see? Well, on the higher difficulties, I would expect, but I have no guarantee, that you'll be more pressed for time traveling around the map. May or may not be true. More aggressive alien progression, that's almost certainly true. That you'll see more dangerous enemies sooner than you would on lower difficulty levels. And the aliens are almost certain to have increased stats, just increased raw stats across the board. I would also be happy if they did extra or perhaps less preventable dark events. That would be awesome. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they never ever jigger with that mechanic, because it's too central and the balancing, it would be intense. But it would be nice. On the tactical side, we already talked about increased enemy stats. The AI, one of the big jumps in difficulty in XCOM 2012 was that the AI became much more likely to use all of its special abilities, especially area of effect attacks like grenades or poison spit, instead of its normal attack. Normal attacks generally being the easiest for you to control, and special attacks being the craziest and hardest to deal with. So you can expect smarter and more often ability use from everything on the higher difficulties. Maybe mission timers would be faster, maybe not. Reinforcements come in more often. I don't know. The worst would be if alien pods were smarter about how they searched for you and how they reacted to combat with other pods. If getting into a fight with one pod drew other pods towards you on the map, that would make a game incredibly difficult without touching the stats at all. Also, since we know Long War Studio is making mods for launch day for XCOM 2, and they've had, let's see, so they wrapped up Long War at the, in December, middle of December, I think. They've probably been working for a couple months, would be my guess. 3 months, 4. And on these mods, they wouldn't have had time to do... it depends on how easy the modding tools are. I would guess that they would take a cue from the work they've already done with Long War, and that we can expect to see on the strategic side even more aggressive alien progression. And nastier dark events like I would hope for. You can expect to see post-mission fatigue from your soldiers for sure. You'll have to cycle through your roster more. Your barracks, acquiring new soldiers is going to be really important. Getting a large, well-equipped, experienced barracks with a versatile mix of soldiers is going to be like required. You won't be able to send the same soldiers out on mission after mission because they're going to be busy sleeping or taking vacation time, or sleeping off wounds, because wounds are going to cause you to stay in the hospital for a long time in under Johnny's sweet hand balance. You can also expect new and remixed area bonuses, I would bet, for the different territories you can control. Expect those territory bonuses to be awesome and crazy interesting. He's also very likely to take all of the slack out of every single mechanic, which means that you're not going to have enough intel to do everything. You're not going to have even near enough supplies to do everything. Everything will be more expensive and probably take longer. And when you make a choice, it's going to be really impactful as to how the game plays out, starting with making the choice and probably for a couple months of gameplay. In-game months, of course. On the tactical side, it's almost impossible to predict everything that will change. Long War was incredibly complete. But I would expect remixed perk trees on every class to make the balance a bit better. When I look through the perk trees, I immediately wanted to remix them. And I'm sure there are a bunch of interesting... oh my, I don't know. If they could put in more classes, like completely new classes, you know he will. Johnny does be loving his class choices. Probably larger squad size. I would say more substantial loadout offerings. If they almost certainly can create new equipable items, and you can expect a ton of equipable items. If they're making a straight port of Long War, and by straight really wouldn't be possible considering how different the strategic games are. But if he's following in his own footsteps, you can expect a ton of nice little items to make loadout choice incredibly significant. Because his goal is always to make choices more meaningful when they finally come out. I would expect also to see damage reduction, aka armor, granted by cover. And I would expect to see, hopefully, the weapon technologies each having their own kind of specific bonuses that differentiate them from each other, such as in Long War, the Gauss weapons, which are similar to the magnetic weapons in XCOM 2, they ignored armor. They ignored, like, not even a whole point of armor, technically. Anyway, they pierced armor better than other weapons, whereas the pulse laser type weapons had a higher crit chance. Plasma did the most damage, and ballistic was what you had to begin with. Anyway, with time and the power of the new XCOM 2 editor, you can expect that the Long War mods will be incredible. And I am totally stoked that they will exist from day one, because I seriously told myself when XCOM 2 came out, I'm like, I don't know if I think I'm gonna wait until there's a Long War mod for it. But then I ended up pre-ordering the game anyway, because I can't resist. So, difficulty levels, you might not be worth it punishing yourself on the hardest difficulty. I'm going to, but that's because I think I'm a badass. I could be wrong. You can find out on my YouTube channel, launch day. And if there's a Long War mod that is even vaguely tempting, Long War Studios mod, I am on it. Totally.
Incoming transmission.
Day 18, Tactics, Legendary Tactics. So, on the Legendary difficulty, I can tell you a couple things that you're going to need to focus on that won't be required in lower difficulty levels, but are still going to be useful in all of them. Alright, so, let's begin. A guaranteed thing. Attacks that don't miss and grenades are really good. Really good. I know when I broke down the classes, I actually don't think I picked a single one of the attacks that says don't miss as like a must-have ability. But a lot of people are going to find that these guaranteed hits can make a huge difference. They can do a lot for you. They can make up a lot of ground. I would suggest that if you find yourself perhaps playing at a difficulty above your skill level, and if I find myself in a legendary Long War Studio modded Ironman mode game and can't win it, then I'm going to start to say, you know what, these no-miss attacks are probably what I need to make up ground. Because they're guaranteed to work. They just reduce the randomness of your tactical situation, and that is amazing. Now, because if you see someone with 2 health, you can send that gremlin over and end them. If you see someone with 5, maybe your cannon can do it. You would know. However, there are non-abilities. You can bring this with anyone via grenades. And this is why you see Beagle Rush always using tons of grenades every mission, because grenades cannot miss, and their damage is guaranteed. And you know exactly what they're going to do, and they can hit multiple people. So grenades are really, really good. If you find yourself losing, you're like, God, I can't hit anything. Or if only that guy had died, or that last shot, I really needed it to land it. What you really should have had is a grenade equipped, and you should have tossed the grenade, because the grenade will hit. The grenade will deal a significant amount of damage. It will destroy cover. They are so good. Take grenades. Now, if you find you're using a ton of grenades, know that no miss attacks are in the realm of grenades when it comes to usefulness. They are incredibly useful and good. All right, another thing to consider. What's better than heavy cover for defense? Full concealment is the best. That is, you can't see the enemy and they can't see you. That makes you invincible until it stops being true. So moving up behind a full wall where you can't see around the corner and the enemy can't is one of the strongest things you can possibly do. Also, just running away. If you're badly damaged and there's no Overwatch to gun you down as you move, then pulling a soldier all the way back, just sprinting into the background, becomes really important. Later on in the game, when people become really tough and the enemy starts fighting at kind of longer ranges and cover is destroyed and not all that reliable with a regular basis, you may find yourself standing out in the open with smoke grenade cover being what you need, or hunkering behind some kind of mechanical device, or having to stick to cover that can't possibly be destroyed, which is really important to figure out which cover is invincible. Generally it's built into the ground and it's not some sort of box. So hunkering is also good. Hunkering is better than heavy cover. I would say hunkering behind low cover should be better than full cover. But that's just a design decision. I believe from the stats I saw that the 50 dodge bonus is definitely going to do that for you. And like I said, smoke grenades plus cover. Smoke grenades stack with everything, which makes them amazing. You're going to need way more smoke grenades. You're going to want smoke grenades in your legendary playthrough. At least I almost guarantee it. I know that I can get a lot of use out of smoke grenades. They're just really good to make a fight much more one-sided. Okay, when it comes to upgrades, you're going to want better aim. Failing that, or having achieved better aim, you're going to want better weapons, and then you're going to want better armor, and then you're going to want better support items, pretty much in that order. Anything that helps your aim is great, because it lowers that randomness. And your whole goal to survive a legendary playthrough is to negate and avoid as much randomness as possible. Once you get past that did I hit or miss thing, then it's how much damage did I do. And while you're always going to deal some damage depending on what weapon you have equipped, the more damage you deal, the better. So this isn't like you do 0 damage or you do 50. This is like an incremental increase in damage when you get better weapons. But that is super good. Super good. Armor comes next. It's more important to have effective offense in XCOM than to have effective tanking power, because a lot of your defense comes from good positioning, not from how much health you have. Later on in the game, of course, you need a significant amount of health to survive anything that's going to happen. But early in the game, you practically have no health, and it all comes from good positioning, defense, hunkering, and killing enemies faster than they can shoot at you. So armor is a lower priority than aim and weapons. Lastly, good items. Some items are going to be more important than these other ones. It's hard to tell without having a full list. But you can expect that better items to be on the bottom of your list when it comes to research and development. Alright, line of sight control. When I'm playing Legendary, the last thing I want is another pod of Legendary sectoids or sectopods rolling up on me while I'm fighting a pod of Legendary Berserkers. It is definitely that simple. My squad is only going to have the resources to take out one pod at a time if on a normal basis, and you can't split your attention, nor can you survive concentrated enemy fire when it is the most badass enemies that the designers could come up with. So, line of sight control. Here, let me give you an easy rule of thumb. I know I've talked about this before, but maybe I haven't given a very solid example of how this works. You start with 4 soldiers. The safest and simplest way to do this is to move 1 soldier forward and slightly to the right of the direction you want to advance. And then you move another soldier forward and slightly to the left of where you want to advance. Then your 2 remaining soldiers do not move further forward or further left or right than either of your forward soldiers. And that is how you safely advance without expanding your line of sight. Moving behind full concealment, like sticking to the sides of buildings, is a great idea. Getting up on roofs is the best idea, and we'll get around to that. But that's basically it. What you do is you say, all right, this guy didn't encounter any aliens. Then you move someone else up. You're like, this one didn't encounter any aliens. And then you just don't go anywhere those people haven't seen yet. And you should be safe from triggering enemy pods with those last 2 movements. The reason you don't want to trigger them with the last 2 movements is you've already moved 2 of your soldiers and you just have less actions to react to that enemy with before it's their turn. It is always better for aliens to activate on their turn than it is to activate on your turn, because then they don't get to shoot at you until after you get a full round of actions. So try very hard not to trigger aliens on your turn, unless you're going to ambush, crush, don't have a choice because there's a time pressure or something like that. So about those roofs though. So roofs come with aim bonuses. Really easy to control your line of sight up there, because as long as you're like a space or 2 away from the edge, you're just not going to see any enemies that are within your sight range, generally. And when you do take to the edge of the roof, you're going to have a great line of sight of all the enemies, and it's going to be easy to target whatever you want. Roofs are so good. Get your whole squad up on the roofs as soon as possible, unless you're specifically lurking around below for some other reason. And whenever you fight, try and stay on the roofs. If you can find heavy cover on a roof, you have it made. A lot of people might have to take low cover just because, in that case, try and hunker. I don't know. Play it safe. Smoke grenades. Information warfare. Concealment, battle scanners. So all of this, knowing what's going on in the battlefield is going to help you do everything else I've just said better. You're going to want battle scanners. You're going to want, during the concealment phase, to scout out the enemy. You're going to know how many pods are left on the level. You're going to know what kind of enemies you're going to encounter. All of these things will help you make better choices, and you really need to invest in those. Bring battle scanners. Scout. Spend time sending someone out. Keep your ranger concealed if you can. Give a ranger the concealment ability so they can cloak even on missions where you don't start out concealed, because otherwise, you know, their ghost-like movement is not going to be of any use at all. And lastly, a couple abilities that you should always keep in mind as incredibly powerful. Rupture. Anything that ruptures, that is the schism ability of the Psi operatives, hopefully mixed with the Void Rift or whatever it is. The rupture attack of the Grenadier that increases damage for all follow-up attacks is going to be fantastic against all targets, especially high health targets. Hollow targeting, suppression, these are so good. So good. Inspire, an extra turn for someone, trade your turn for theirs. Yes, that's going to save you so much. You don't even know until you have it how good it's going to be. Stasis shield, those are going to rock. Anything that gives you extra actions, you want more of. Rapid fire, oh yeah. Just Just the more efficient every turn can be, the better. Anything that adds value to other people's turns, like Rupture adds damage to your other character's attacks, Hollow Targeting adds aim to your other character's attacks, or that locks enemies out, like Suppression and Stasis, is so good. You want to enhance your actions, deny enemy actions, and if you find something that gives you bonus actions, that's even better. And try and get multipliers on that. You want Hollow Targeting combined with Rapid Fire. Oh, it's, yeah, you want to really synergize if you want to crush the highest.
Incoming transmission.
Day 18, Disposition, Ironman mode. So in Ironman mode, you have no control over your saves. When something happens, it has happened for good, it happened forever. That is, when a soldier goes down, you can't reload. That's it. That's what happened. That is your life. They are dead, and you must move on. What you're going to want to do in this case is you're going to play safer. That is, heavier armor, more med kits, less questionable tactics, no running into the center of enemies, nothing, less risk, more sight control. You just want to be stricter with yourself about everything you should already do. I suggest bringing extra medkits. I suggest cycling soldiers out of combat. Like when your weapon's out of ammo, you might consider moving back and reloading. Unless you have a good shot, obviously. If you get hit, you might cycle that soldier back so that another soldier can get hit to spread the damage across your squad. You want safer trait choices, like more defensive choices that don't require you to go out on a limb so much, like all of the sword skills are kind of based on you being really close to an enemy, and that's kind of dangerous. And expect to do a lot more overwatching and waiting, as well as abusing grenades' ability to be tossed over things, especially things that the enemies can't see through and you can't see through. Like if you get on the side of a big tractor trailer, say, and someone like your ghosted ranger or a battle scanner tells you there's an enemy pod on the other side, that's the perfect time to throw a grenade so that you aren't ever revealed and they take damage. Maybe burn. Maybe they're burning. That would be great. And you're going to want to pay attention to more of the enemy's strengths and weaknesses. You're going to want to know the cooldowns of enemy abilities after you've seen them a couple times. How often do they use these things? You're not going to be able to overpower an enemy at their own strength most of the time on the highest difficulty mode. And in Ironman, it becomes really important not even to try. Like the sectopod, you're not going to be able to outlast the sectopod in a stand-up fight. You need to make it unfair. You need to suppress. You need to raise everyone's defense. You need to have it target someone you know it's going to miss. It's really important to avoid the alien strengths in Ironman mode and higher difficulties, because they will wreck you if you try and take them head on at what they're good at. There's also just more of them. Eventually you can't win. The RNG will get you eventually if you keep trying to take them head on at exactly what they're good at. So figure out what they're bad at and take advantage of that. Lastly, I'd like to say that your soldiers are going to die. Some of your soldiers are going to go down in Ironman mode, and you're going to face the decision whether to rage quit or to keep going. And the answer should be keep going, I think. It's one soldier, it doesn't take that many missions to level up your soldiers. You have a lot of soldiers. Try and cycle your soldiers out so that you actually do have a decent roster of soldiers, lest you lose your only decently leveled specialist. That can be incredibly painful. So try and keep like an A, B, and C team, out there. It can be incredibly devastating to lose a soldier when you only have 5 or 6 good soldiers. So try really hard to cycle your soldiers out and get a good 12 to 18 skilled soldiers. In Long War, And as presumably in the mods to come, you're gonna need like 40 skilled soldiers, but that's not everyone's experience. Anyway, do that. Have a nice roster, and then the individual losses won't hurt quite so bad. Alright friends, that's it for day 18. If you enjoyed this content, please go ahead and like this video. If you'd like to see the next advent calendar video as soon as it comes out, please subscribe to my channel. Tomorrow we'll be talking about strategic rewards, when the dust settles, and surprises.